welcome to All Things Savannah, our podcast about the people, the history, and the stories and the inside info on the hostess city. I'm Danielle Oak. I've got Frank Morrow with me, and today we've got Rita Elliott, who is going to tell us about archaeology in Savannah, amongst other things. She is the Research Associate Education Coordinator at the LAMAR Institute. So, welcome, Rita.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's run down her background just a little bit for you here. Elliott
impressive.
Has got an amazing background, holds a master's degree in maritime and underwater research. She is an archaeologist, an exhibit designer, former museum curator for over 30 years. She's got that kind of archaeological experience in 14 states, 3 U.S. territories, and several countries. That's probably just before breakfast she did all that.
Yeah, exactly.
She's written over 80 monographs and articles. That's probably just scratching the surface. So it's going to be an interesting program.
Yeah, so many questions. Let's go back to the beginning, Rita, and talk about your childhood. Were you the sort of kid who was digging in the dirt? I mean, did you know early on that you wanted to be an archaeologist?
Well, I've decided when I was in 5th grade I wanted to be an archaeologist. I was it's summer, and I was lamenting to my big brother, one of my big brothers, that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up because I was already in 5th grade and I should make these decisions.
Know.
It's time.
So I said, I like to be a private detective, but I like history. And I said, well, you should be an archaeologist. I said, well, what's that? So I went to the library and got out a huge stack of books, and I thought, this sounds really cool. So it stuck.
So
Sure
for
did.
5th grade, that's fantastic. So how were you nurtured in that, or were you nurtured? Obviously, your big brother thought it was a great idea.
Yes, and my family did too. My mom and dad are just notoriously wonderful for supporting all of the kids, and they didn't know much about it, but they said, if that's what you want to do, go for it. So I just kept getting books out, and they kept encouraging me, and so it
When
works.
did it become serious? I mean, sometimes those things fade
Right,
over time as you get older and
right.
you get into other things as a teenager maybe. When did it really take and you started moving seriously in that direction?
Well, the underwater archaeology part, the same big brother took a diving class, a scuba course, when he was in high school, and I thought, ooh, I wonder if I could combine those, archaeology and underwater, and then I started researching that, and said, yeah, you could do that. So that kind of helped feed it, encourage it. But when I went on my first dig in undergraduate school, I thought, wow, this is really different. It's like come back and you're like every bone in your body's aching and your muscles are aching and
you're filthy, dirty.
You're filthy. And it's like, this is really different, but I loved it.
Yeah, okay.
So I think archaeology is one of the few things you could do manually with your body and your brain. It's a wonderful combination of both things, and I think I really enjoy that as well. So it just stuck, and when I finally got to do it in the real world, it's backbreaking work oftentimes, and very, and people always say, oh, I've always wanted to be an archaeologist. And they mean that, but they don't have a clue. Usually, like, you're out, in horrible weather. A lot of times you're digging through clay. It can be really hard, but yet the rewards are huge. When you make important discoveries about people in the past, it makes it all up for it. Plus, there are some beautiful days to be outside as well.
Right, that's true. Yeah. So how did that form, that desire then, how did that form the rest of your childhood, I was thinking, like, high school's not actually the ideal place to find information in archaeology. Like, you're not going to get a lot of support there necessarily.
Yes.
Was it a dream? Did it just feel like, is this going to be my future, or?
I felt pretty strong about it, but my high school counselor said, well, if you're going to be an archaeologist, you need to take Latin. So it's like, I took Latin, and like, she meant well, but y'all don't have to take Latin to become archaeologists.
Good to know.
Yeah, although I did take Latin and Greek and Spanish, but anyhow, I wasn't good at any of them, really. So I just kind of started, learning more about it, and then in college, of course, I was able to funnel my courses into what I was truly interested in, and I had some good professors that helped me along the way.
Okay.
And then my dad was in the military, so I think I really got my love of travel and discovery through that, because we were always taking him to the airport, and I'd look at the airplanes and think, I wonder where all those people are going in that airplane. It's like, I'm going to be on that one day. So I love to travel still, I think, because of that.
It's kind of important probably at this stage to sort of define what archaeology is and is not.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is an important point, because in our promo, if you saw us talking about fossils, and I didn't even know this, but so tell us that fossils is not your department.
Well, I'm glad y'all brought that up, because most people think archaeology is dinosaurs, right? But in reality, the paleontologists do dinosaurs, and I don't have a clue about dinosaurs. But archaeology is anything based on, archaeology is the study, the scientific study of how we live in the past based on the things that were left behind. So anything to do with humans is fair game for archaeology. That could be animal bones because of what they're eating or what's in the environment around them. It could be the study of plants and what kinds of environments are there. It could be the study of human bones and the physical characteristics of people. And mostly the study of the things they left in the past, the artifacts and the features. People don't know about features, but all the things that can contribute to our understanding of how people lived in the past. You know, and people always think if they realize that archaeology is not dinosaurs, then they think, oh, it's artifacts. So I'm going to bring this big old bag of artifacts into you, and you tell me what you know about them. And that's just, it's like taking a gun from the crime scene and saying, tell me, you know, about this murder. Well, if you had left the gun in place and I mapped it in and took all the clues and recorded those and interpreted them, I could tell you who did it, what time it was done, why did they do it, all this stuff.
So you're a CSI investigator in a different way.
Exactly, right. And features in the ground are a big part of that. So, you know, if somebody digs a hole and throws that gun away, and years down the road you find it, then you can associate that particular feature with that gun and an incident that may have happened. So what's in the ground, it's not just the artifacts, it's the features, it's the trash pits, the privies, the wells, all those things that need to get recorded scientifically to be able to tell the whole story. So I think a lot of people don't understand what features are and why they're so important.
Yeah.
You, as part of the LAMAR Institute, produce reports on all of these things. And I was stunned to read on your website there are something like 238 reports, there may be more now. Each, you know, we're talking about 200, 400 pages. I mean, we're talking about a lot of information. What, you know, how does that process look? So you go to a site and you investigate.
Well, before we even get out to the site, we figure out, okay, what is it we're trying to learn from this site? So if it's a known site, that we have an idea of you know, where it is located, who might live there. So we do a whole lot of research first, and then we try to figure out what are we looking for, because you can't find something if you don't know what you're looking for, right? So we come up with a research design, figure out what are we looking for, how we're going to go about finding it, what kinds of questions do we want to ask of the site, and how we're going to answer those questions. So once we make out the research design, we do some research in advance, then we go out to the site, we do the field work, which is what everybody knows about. Oh, yeah, archaeologists digging their dirt. That's pretty straightforward. Yeah. Although how we do it is different from most people, what they realize we do. You know, it's very systematic, very incremental. As you know, when you were excavating with us, you not only record how deep you go, you sift the dirt to pull out the artifacts, and then you have to separate those things, and you have to take really good notes, because if you don't, you might as well just dig it up and throw it away. It's worthless.
And you're using tech also, right? High tech, radar?
Yes, we are. We still use a shovel, but we also use all sorts of things now. We use ground penetrating radar, which is a wonderful way to see in the soil before you start digging and to get an idea what's there. We use all sorts of resistivity tools. We use GIS systems to do map overlays of historic maps and the modern maps to figure out where things might be located. Just a lot more tech stuff, obviously, than they did, you know, even 20 years ago. So then we do the field work, and then you never see us again because we're back at the lab, you know, washing all the artifacts, then analyzing every single artifact. I don't care if it's a rusty nail to a piece of brick to, you know, a plate from the 1700s. Analyze all those, put those into a database, and that's when you can answer questions. People come out in the field and say, you know, what are you finding? What does it mean? And we can tell you a little bit, but it's not until you do that interpretation. You look at your data and you start running all sorts of data queries on it. You start trying to figure out what's the ratio of this artifact to that artifact. How does that compare to people in Charleston, to people in all over? What's their data compared to our data? So that's when you start really getting cool information. That's what makes it exciting. Then you put all that into a report that most people don't read. But we have pictures, so you can look at the pictures. And then we have interpretations. And then that's where, you know, we have all this cool information that we hope make it to the public, whether it's through our reports or through programming at historic sites or house sites or whatever. You know, that or exhibits, that information needs to get out to the public because that's really important.
Okay, so I have a couple questions. First of all, what does LAMAR, you're from the LAMAR Institute, what does that stand for?
Well, back in 1982, a bunch of graduate students got together, and there weren't as many jobs in archaeology back then, so they came up with a nonprofit, and LAMAR is a big name in Georgia, a last name in Georgia, but it's also a type site for certain kind of Native American pottery, but they needed to make it an acronym. So they came up with Lower Appalachian Mississippian Archaeological Research.
Wow.
Okay, right.
Right.
I remember it being a mouthful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mississippian is a time period in prehistory, in Native American history.
Okay.
And so at the time, LAMAR Research Associates were mostly focused on Native American archaeology. But since then, in the last 30 years, we've also focus on historical archaeology, so non-Native American historic archaeology. So so LAMAR is just an easier way to say that, but we do a broad range of archaeological research and public outreach.
Okay. Speaking of that, we have just a short list. Frank compiled this. Do you want to read this list? No, I just think it's really good to for people to have an idea of all the things that you guys have worked on.
Okay.
And this is sort of the notable things. I mean, again, we said 200 plus reports, maybe there are more. The Juliette Gordon Low birthplace was a huge one recently, right?
Yes,
Just in the last couple of years. There's also the railroad. You've done a lot of archaeology around railroad sites in Savannah. The Isaiah Davenport house, there were some excavations there. Laurel Grove Cemetery, which we know so many prominent people are buried from Savannah there. Kennedy Pharmacy, also close to the Davenport. Those are just a few of them. Revolutionary War sites as well.
Yeah, so that's a lot. That's just the tip of the iceberg here in Savannah, right? And so I think that's really important for people here to know that there are a lot of very active things that have been going on underground, literally under our feet, and that people might not know about. So tell us about, some of the more significant
well, I'll just do a shout out for LAMAR Institute because we have several research associates, and Mark Williams, formerly at EGA, emeritus professor there, he's done a whole lot of archaeology. He's got a lot of his reports on the website as well. And there's been other folks along the way that have done archaeology for LAMAR and put it on the report list. So there are a lot of folks involved. We've done a whole lot as well. My husband, Rita Elliott, is also an archaeologist, and he's got a huge list of reports.
And he
on
co-authors.
Yeah, we work together a lot.
That's
and we're still married.
Sounds good. There's hope for all of us.
Yeah, it's a good thing. But just to focus on Savannah, so LAMAR's we've done several projects in Savannah, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of what is out there. We could talk about that in a minute, but some of the ones you've rattled off have been really incredible sites that I've had the honor of working on. When I was at Coastal Heritage Society, my crew found the redoubt, Spring Hill Redoubt, so the Revolutionary War fort where the main battle of Savannah happened in 1779. We actually located that. And then the Davenport House, we found incredible features, found a big old privy right on the lot line of the two lots. Isaiah Davenport lived initially on the lot next door in a wooden house. And then the Davenport house you see now is the one that he built when he was living there. He built this nice big fancy house when he had enough money to do that. So we got all kinds of great information from the trash that was thrown in the privy, all sorts of things about people that were living there and working there.
Right.
I'm just kind of doing a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great.
That's fine.
And then, most recently, the Juliette Gordon Low was an incredible site because, so we got, you think, okay, we're going to find Juliette Gordon Low stuff. And we did. We found some stuff from the Gordon family, and we found the first gold I have ever found. People always say, find any gold lately?
Right.
I always say, no, I give them the spiel about what we find is way more important than gold, which it is because what the information it tells you is what's important. But darn it, we went and found gold. So now I can't say that anymore.
That must have been pretty
but we found,
surprising.
From her family, possibly her mother, whatever, a gold locket. So that was amazing. But then the cool thing about that site was, oh my gosh, that site had one of the earliest houses on it in Savannah, 1733. One of the first from the get-go. And it always had wealthy, influential people living on that site, along with enslaved African Americans and indentured servants, so a whole mix. But we had Indian traders living there. We found gunflints from the gunflints they were getting from Europe and selling or trading with the Indians for deer skins. We found big cellars full of artifacts from all these people that lived there over the past. The provost marshal, the vice president of the colony of Georgia lived there. Incredible people and stories. So all sorts of stuff. And then, of course, all the way up to Juliette Gordon Low and after. So if you think about those were 2 lots put together, but a lot in Savannah is 60 by 90 feet.
Right.
If you think about over almost 300 years, how many people could have lived on that lot? How many stories are in the soil?
Sure.
And how much of that gets destroyed when people dig into the soil, particularly when they're going to build a hotel or a parking garage, when you're digging everything out. People always say, well, at least, they're going to pave. It's so sad they're going to pave over it. But it's okay. If they paved over it, archaeologists would be happy because it would protect it. But it's when they dig into the ground to lay sewer lines,
they may
pilings.
be destroying history.
And you can't get it back.
Right.
If you cut a plant dies, you can dig it up and replant another plant. You can't get a 18th century site back. You can't make them again.
Let me pause us here for
Sure.
just 1 second. We just want to let everybody know we are coming to you from the Twin Spades Lounge at The Bluff, 630 West Bay Street, Historic District, downtown Savannah. And this is where Rita Elliott's office is. Not literally, but in this area, right?
Yeah.
This is all things Savannah. Rita Elliott of the LAMAR Institute is our guest. She's an archaeologist, and a fascinating discussion we're having today.
Yeah, so tell us more.
Okay, so some of the sites you mentioned, the Kennedy Pharmacy.
Yeah.
That was an incredible site as well, because every time you look at these sites, you're learning about a particular component of Savannah history. On that site, I don't think many people know about the history of Chinese in Savannah. There was a vibrant Chinese community in Savannah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that before I started working this. I heard, rumors and all, but that's one of the things we delved into. There were Chinese laundries at the Kennedy Pharmacy. There was never a pharmacy called the Kennedy Pharmacy, which threw me off right from the beginning.
Is that right?
Robert Kennedy was the owner of the property, and he had that building constructed, but there was never a pharmacy called. So if you do research, you're not going to find the Kennedy Pharmacy.
But
there were lots of there was a William Cleveland owned or had a pharmacy there in. They had an anti-migraine medicine. So if you drive by there, you might see faint image of these on the side of the wall. There's a mural that says anti-migraine medicine. Well, that was a proprietary drug that was manufactured right there and sold right there. And it's amazing because that's Savannah history, but it's tied into the bigger U.S. history because that was involved in the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act that passed.
Oh.
They cited the anti-migraine medicine as one of the problem medicines.
But who would have known that?
Yeah,
I mean, that's sort of
know.
like the connection and all.
Right, so it's all these stories, and what's really sad is that so many of them are being lost forever because of the development and because there are no requirements. There are virtually no requirements to do archaeology. If you're a private developer, you can have the most incredible site on your property, and you can destroy it like that. It doesn't really matter. But the good news is, about 4 years ago, going on 5, Savannah finally passed the archaeology ordinance. It took 30 years to get Savannah to go to that point, and it's a wonderful first step, but it's only a first step. It's very inadequate.
What does that cover? For instance, so what
Not a
are
whole lot.
people required? Not a whole lot?
So it covers city construction if it's over 1,500 square feet, and if it's not an emergency situation, and if it hasn't, the project wasn't started before the ordinance took place, was enacted. But the issues, there are multiple issues with that. There is nobody, right now, city staff is burdened with trying to deal with that ordinance. And they're all wonderful people in their own departments, but there are no expertise in archaeology on any of the city staff. So it's a burden to them to try to figure out, how do we deal with these issues as they arise. The city of Savannah has a wonderful resource in its archaeology, and it's just letting it go to waste and getting destroyed, unfortunately. Now, a way around that is if the city had a city archaeology department with the city archaeologists and really professional, capable, trained staff, not only could they take the burden off of the staff now, but the archaeology is a huge tourism boom.
Sure.
It could be a money maker, in addition to protecting all of our stories and putting that information out there again to let historical sites, museums, and tour guides and everybody benefit from that information as well.
Amen. Do you hear it?
I hear it.
I'm on board.
Yeah, me too. So, the interesting thing is we didn't intend this, but we have sort of a theme that's been going on here with archivists and curators and people who have been our guests.
Keepers of history.
Keepers of history, and this is important because it might slide in another component that most people haven't been thinking about, but should.
Absolutely.
hopefully we can be a catalyst for getting some
that would
information
be
out
great.
about
We
this.
love archivists because we do a lot of our research at the archives, and
Right.
it's all interrelated. And I think the problem with archaeology is just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there.
Right.
People can't see it, so they can't get their mind around, oh, there's something incredible here. It's got stories to tell. We don't want to destroy it. We want to preserve it. Right. And last year, the city of Savannah took in $30 million in tourism taxes. It seems like a little sliver of 30 million could go well into a department of archaeology that would help bring in tourism and bring in money and preserve our history.
Yeah, because there's digging that's going on all over the place.
Sure.
Does it feel like a little bit of a stab to the heart when you see diggers and all that sort of thing on our streets?
I get so depressed
That must be
when I
terrible.
drive around seeing because in any private development you see does not require archaeology. Anywhere you see development, 99.9% of the times, no archaeology has been done. Now, I will say the exception. There have been a couple historic sites, organizations in Savannah that realize what incredible stewards they can be and how they can benefit from the archaeology, and some of those sites we talked about or some of those entities. But even then, they're just a drop in the bucket for the amount of historic sites that are here. So yeah, it's very sad to see.
Well, hopefully from your lips to somebody's ears,
Right.
That matters because, there are lawmakers, I hope, that are listening and watching and will take note of this.
We've
because
had a couple of champions. Nick Palumbo has been
I was going to
excellent.
ask if Nick Palumbo.
Yes.
He championed us from the get-go to get the ordinance passed, so we
Okay.
so appreciate that. And now we just need to take the next step, which is a lot easier than that first step.
Yeah.
And so, in always, for the longest time when I do outreach, I talk to a lot of tourists and local residents, and I'd say 100% are not aware that Savannah isn't protecting its archaeological research.
Right.
They're always appalled, like, what do you mean? This is Savannah, it's so historic. How can people not be protecting this? So it's
Yes.
always amazes residents and tourists as well.
Yeah.
So we have heard stories that float about, and one of them is that there are a couple of folks buried on a runway at Savannah International Airport. Notable because I think they're marked. I think it's in the concrete. Tell us about that. What's the
They are,
story?
and
What
I
do you
don't-
know, basically?
Yeah,
is
I
what
don't
we're
know
asking.
firsthand, but I know. I've talked to folks that know.
All right.
I know people. I have people. But anyway, so the word is that there were 2 burials there, and the descendants, maybe the people that got buried themselves left it in the will. I don't know, but I think the descendants did not want to have them relocated. So they're actually marked graves too out there, and the family descendants didn't want them relocated, which is usually what happens if there's a cemetery and there's development coming through. 9 times out of 10, that cemetery will be relocated somewhere else.
Okay.
So they didn't want that. So they're out there. So they get planes. I guess they like to travel too. I don't know.
I don't know if I would be, as a family member, going to visit.
Yeah, really.
necessarily.
Right.
Go fast between planes.
In between planes, right? Exactly.
Yeah, one of those urban myths. You've just heard it confirmed. It's not a myth.
Yeah, we now know
It's
for sure.
really true.
Yeah.
Do you need to break for a little?
Why don't we break?
Station ID.
We'll say that this is All Things Savannah. We're coming to you from the Bluff Hotel, 630 West Bay Street, Historic District, downtown Savannah. This is where we do the show every Wednesday. Rita Elliott is our guest, archaeologist with the LAMAR Institute. Fascinating background and history, and some things that surprise us and probably would surprise you too as we dig a little deeper here. Pardon the pun. Lots of them connected to this. Danielle Oak and I are doing our job again. You want to take the next tour here?
Yeah. So what have been the most surprising things, and not just simply about Savannah, but in your career, would have been sort of the more fascinating elements or stories, and not simply what you've dug up. I know that's what everybody asks
Right,
when they
right.
see an archaeologist. What's the best thing you've ever found?
Right.
It goes beyond that. So because interpretation is huge. So what has surprised you in
It
your
is.
career?
Oh my gosh, that's a really hard question. Things always surprise me.
Yeah?
Yeah. So, which I think is a good thing. I don't know. I guess I'll start off with an artifact because that is usually the question we get. What's the neatest thing you've ever found?
Right.
You know? And it's kind of a longer story, but I think it kind of plays up on several things. One of the neatest things we ever found, my husband and I were excavating at New Ebenezer, which is the site about 18 miles northwest of here.
Yes.
Salzburger settlers and others from that area. Folks from the Alps got persecuted and settled on this site, got kicked out of Europe, came over and settled on the site. Oglethorpe had them set up the town of Ebenezer, and then later they relocated to New Ebenezer. So anyway, we're doing excavation out there, and we weren't sure exactly whose town lot we were on because it was laid out exactly like Savannah. So we were excavating what turned out to be a cellar, and the cellar was full of debris, just all sorts of stuff. It had blacksmithing and locksmithing debris and slag. There were stacked eggshells on the bottom, on the cellar floor. Or you know how when you cook and you break eggs open, you stack them just like that from the 1730s.
Wow.
So all sorts of artifacts. So we still didn't know exactly whose lot. It could have been one of these 4 lots because it was at a corner, one of the intersections.
Okay.
So we were in the lab washing like the 1 millionth piece of broken bottle glass, and I took it out of the water, and all of a sudden I could see this RS etched on it. You know, back then bottle glass was super expensive. So if you had a bottle, you kept it and you reused it, you recycled it, reused it for stuff. And this person really valued it, so they put their initials on it.
It was etched, did you say? It was
pecked with like a sharp nail or something, RS. And then I washed some more. Another piece I pulled up, and it was a key etched on it. So we looked back at all of our records, and on one corner was a guy named Rupert Schrimpf. And he was a locksmith and a blacksmith. And it was sandwiched
solved.
between all these layers of fill. When they stopped using the cellar, they threw their trash in it because the cellar got wet. Cellars around here aren't always a good idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's like Rupert threw his business card in there for us to find hundreds and hundreds of years later. So based on that, we could figure out really the overlay of the entire town.
wow.
So,
That is
because we knew exactly
fascinating.
where it came from.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what's fascinating to me. In addition to like the idea of finding something awesome or really interesting, is being able to do exactly what you just said. You found out it belonged to Rupert, and that helped you literally build the city from what you knew of that. Just capturing a bottle.
Yes.
The neck of a bottle.
In its location in the cellar with all of his trash that dated to the exact time period that Rupert lived there.
Right. So right there, it's not just a matter of finding something in the dirt. It's the key to the potential for a much larger understanding of that area, and therefore its importance to current understanding of our own histories, wherever that happens to be. So that's excellent. How fascinating.
So I think it does pinpoint to what you're talking about, why archaeology is so important. Because, anybody can go out and get a shovel and dig up the ground and find things, but it's all the clues that surround these things that are really getting you the information about human behavior. And that's
Because you're on so many sites in so many different places, and we know, when sites are reused, frequently they're hazardous waste sites, for instance. You have to do a little bit of homework, I'm assuming, before you start digging, in that research.
I think a lot.
Yeah, we know she does a lot of background research.
But,
I'm just wondering if you come to a point where you say, whoops, maybe we don't want to do the traditional approach to that particular site.
Well, there are. In fact, the area where we found Spring Hill Redoubt had been remediated for soil toxicity because, the trains there was a lot of industrial pollutants, a lot of really toxic stuff. So before I got hired on, they were remediating the soil, getting all the nasty soil out. So that's one of the things, immediately think, okay, well, they've scraped all the soil away, there won't be any archaeology left, right? In addition to that, people said, you're not going to find the redoubt, the little mini fort from the Revolution. You won't find it there because when the train came in, they leveled up. Okay, it's called Spring Hill, right?
Yeah,
Do you see a hill when you go out there?
Right,
No. So they've scraped the hill off because the trains needed level tracks to come and go into the station.
Yeah.
So they scraped that off. And then they come in and scrape more off for this toxic soil. So it's like, people say, you're not going to find anything. So we looked, and sure enough, we found, granted, the ditch we only found like this much at the bottom of the Revolutionary War ditch. Maybe about that much. And it would have been a 6-foot deep ditch.
Yeah.
So some have got. But still, we found where it was. We found lead balls in it. We found gun flints in it. Wow. So we found it. Yeah. So, people always write off urban archaeology. So, it's a city, it's been disturbed. You're not going to find archaeology there. In a lot of cases, it's been disturbed. But there's so many times where there's pockets of features left, pockets of clues that we can still learn from, even if there's been, you know, a big building right here, there could be cool preserved stuff right there that can tell us
That
about
close,
the past.
yeah,
yeah,
pretty close
yeah,
by.
literally
Right.
that close.
Yeah.
So I have read a couple of the reports
Oh.
that are on the website. Because I'm just interested, and I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was in fifth grade too.
Never too late.
See.
Well, and I have actually.
have,
So
yes.
I've been on one of Rita's digs
Yeah.
with the LAMAR Institute.
Excellent help, by the way.
It was so much fun to be there. It was a very short dig. It was only 1 week. But so I was looking to see what later on were your findings. And what surprised me, it wasn't focused all on the end. It was very front loaded with all the research you did. I was blown away. I mean, she had clips of newspaper articles and advertisements, and I mean the research you do on the front end is enormous. So it's not just a design plan, although that's pretty intensive too. It's this all the historical work that has to be done beforehand for you to really get a concept so that you can accurately put together this design and plan for your dig. So it's not like just grab your tools, we're going in. It's much bigger than that and comprehensive. So I mean, we all have this image of Indiana Jones, right? And you know, he's got his dad's old book and he's reading through the notes, and that's not far from the truth as far as like the amount of background information that has to be done in before anything's ever found.
Yes, that's true. We do a lot of research for all of our projects, and that one, Dan Elliott did a whole lot of research, and specifically on the Chinese community, and he came up with dozens and dozens and dozens of names of Chinese people that lived in Savannah, the community. So that was incredible.
Background right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's fun. It's been a lot easier lately. There's a lot more archival materials on the internet that's available. Not all of them, but it helps. I mean, we still have to travel to various repositories around the country and overseas as well, which is fun to look at original documents. But a lot more of that is online now, which is helpful.
I'll just point out that I was doing some reading last night as well, and I happened to find Danielle's name in that report, which kind of leapt off the page at me, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. She did say she did some work.
Well,
that
we
was on site.
appreciate our volunteers. And I mean, she
Absolutely.
did, and you know, you have volunteers and you have volunteers.
Sure.
So we had some good volunteers. We love good volunteers, and Danielle, you certainly were.
It doesn't
a
surprise
good
any of us,
volunteer.
really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But as you say, volunteers. So if this has excited you, if you're curious, if you've always wanted to do something like this, check your areas. I mean, if you're in Savannah, how would you find out about volunteering for a dig?
Oh, it's hard because there's so many more people that want to volunteer than there are opportunities. There used to be Society for Georgia Archaeology is a good statewide organization. It's got chapters across the state. There used to be a chapter in Savannah for the longest time. It was run by Chica Arndt and her husband, Carl Arndt. And unfortunately, Carl passed away, and nobody's taken the helm. But that was an excellent place to go for meetings, and you could hear speakers every month. You could get opportunities. In fact, they came out and helped us on our Spring Hill project, so it was a good chance to go out in the field and stuff. So unfortunately that chapter's defunct now. I would throw out a caveat, just because it says archaeology or digging in the title doesn't mean they're archaeologists. There are some groups that go out and dig up on sites. Sometimes they don't have permission, property owner permission, and usually, you know, archaeology is a science, and it's not that we're highfalutin and we can do it better. We've just been trained in all the techniques that you need to deal with the site and to record it appropriately. Because once you dig a site, you don't get another chance to dig that exact spot again.
Right, it's been disturbed.
So it needs to be done by professional archaeologists. And then the artifacts. We don't keep anything we find. You know, we're not allowed to. We pay repositories to take these artifacts so that the collection will be together forever, safe from rodents and theft
stored,
and fires and getting mixed up. So those collect, but the value of that is, you know, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years from now, anybody can come to that collection, study it with new techniques, new technology, new questions, and learn. They might say, that Rita Elliott was an idiot. She doesn't know what she's talking about. But that's okay.
We don't think that's going to be the case.
If my interpretations are wrong, the artifacts are there, and they can get data and figure out new things from that. So that's why it's so important.
So I'm interested, just before we close up shop, because I know we're starting to run short on time, you know, there's been so much work done on the Savannah River lately in terms of deepening it. I don't know how you feel about that, but we know that part of what you have done is underwater research. What's your thought about not only the project that continually deepens it, but whether or not there's some need, I don't know if the Army Corps of Engineers has consulted any archaeologists in that process or not. Tell us what you think about that.
Well, I was lucky enough to be involved in the raising of the CSS Georgia. So I did all the outreach for that. It was wonderful. We had festivals and all sorts of outreach. And then I was able to go on board just on the barge for a week to do some of the archaeology. But the real underwater archaeologists were out there for a much longer time. And they wrote the reports and everything. So that's a done deal. What's good about that stuff is that's protected by the federal government. They have to do archaeology. If permits or money are involved from the federal government, there's legislation that kicks in that requires that. But there's so many other places that isn't not protected. Things that get developed on the sides of the waterway, not necessarily. So it just depends. And just real quick, in Effingham County, we're trying to mitigate the adverse impacts from destruction that are coming our way from the port development. And it's obliterating all the environmental green space, habitat, wetlands, quality of water, quality of air. So I'm working with Effingham Georgia Green to try to do some smart growth and try to preserve some of those wetlands before it's too late.
These are all logistical complexes, right? They're basically warehouses for the port.
1 million square foot warehouses plunked down in a wetlands right next to the water intake. So even if you don't give a hoot about the environment, everybody needs clean drinking water.
Sure.
Everybody needs clean air. So it's a no-brainer that we need to start preserving some of these places. And when you preserve green space, you also preserve a lot of times archaeological sites because they're in the same locations.
Excellent point.
Wow.
Really.
Okay, so for people to learn more about the LAMAR Institute, what's the best thing for them to do?
Go to our website. We don't have a fancy website. A lot of people do, but we're really proud of the fact that anybody can go on the reports page and look at or download for free the reports that we have to make that information available. And so you can learn a little bit more about us through that way, but certainly go visit our reports and learn about Savannah history through the archaeology there.
Right.
It's a treasure trove of information, it really is.
Yeah, so that's www.
TheLamarInstitute.org. We
Capital
got
LA.
hijacked.
We'll put it in the.
Yeah, we got hijacked a couple years ago
no.
by a truck driving company, Acme Truck Driving or whatever. So anyway, so if you don't put it in THE, you won't find us, but TheLamarInstitute.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll put that in the info box
Cool.
down below. And thank you so much.
This is great.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your
We're
interest in the history and
Oh,
archaeology.
it's fascinating.
Yes,
Really
yes,
enjoyed
this
it.
is something we can all get behind.
Oh,
I think.
yeah. I'll have to get you out in the field again. Get
Absolutely.
you out.
I'll go with her. Absolutely, I'm ready.
Bring your
I'm ready.
neighbors.
Rita Elliott of the LAMAR Institute, archaeologist. Great discussion with her. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe. It seems kind of innocuous, but we really want to have your subscriptions. And we also, I'll just put a pitch in, we are in the Best of Savannah contest for Connect Savannah magazine. You can vote from now through March 6th. Please do that for us too if you like what you see.
Every day.
Yeah, every day. Vote every day,
You're
early and
supposed
often.
to vote.
This is one case where you can do it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's all right.
Next week?
Next week, we're going to have an amazing young woman who has a boutique right off of Wright Square, which we've been to just recently, called House of Strut. And her name is Erica. She is the owner. She is fascinating. She's got a lot to say. We're going
Lots of
to
fun.
have her with us for a half hour 1 week from today.
Yeah. So let's do this again.
Let's do this again.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks.
Bye.